The world was a blur of whispered apologies and averted eyes. Ilara's life had become a series of small, quiet humiliations. The latest was unfolding in the sterile overlit exam room of St. Jude's General. She sat on the crinkling paper of the examination table, her hands clenched into fists in her lap, the scent of antiseptic and despair clinging to the air. Dr. Albright, her usual gastroenterologist, a man with the bedside manner of a stone, had just left after delivering his usual unhelpful verdict. The tests show nothing conclusive, Ilara. IBS, most likely. You need to manage your stress. Perhaps see a therapist. Manage your stress. The words were a slap. How did one manage the stress of one's own body turning traitor? How did one explain the crippling abdominal pain that could strike in the middle of a business meeting? Or the urgent, unpredictable need for a bathroom that had made her cancel more dates than she could count? She was 28, a successful graphic designer with a life that looked perfect from the outside. But inside, she was a prisoner of a condition she was too mortified to name, let alone describe in graphic detail to yet another disinterested doctor. He just doesn't get it, she whispered to the empty room, her voice thick with unshed tears. She felt a familiar, ominous gurgle in her abdomen and squeezed her eyes shut. Not now, please, not now. The door clicked open. Ilara kept her eyes closed, assuming it was the nurse with discharge papers. Ms. Thorne? The voice was new, younger, softer. It held a resonance that was both calming and unsettling. Ilara's eyes fluttered open. He wasn't what she expected. He looked to be in his early 30s with dark, slightly unruly hair and kind, intelligent eyes behind a pair of stylish, tortoiseshell glasses. He wore a white coat over dark scrubs, a stethoscope draped around his neck like a modern-day laurel. In his hands was her file. I'm Dr. Evans, he said, offering a small, genuine smile. I'm a specialist consulting with Dr. Albright's team. I hope you don't mind, but I've been reviewing your chart. Ilara's first instinct was to shrink, to pull the thin hospital gown tighter around her. A young, handsome doctor was the last person she wanted to confess her ugly, undignified symptoms to. The humiliation would be complete. Another one? She said, her voice laced with a bitterness she didn't quite intend. Are you here to also tell me it's all in my head? Dr. Evans didn't flinch. He pulled up a stool and sat, not behind a desk, but directly in front of her, his gaze level and earnest. No, I'm here to listen. Dr. Albright is a brilliant man, but his approach can be clinical. Your file is full of test results, but it tells me nothing about you. What does the pain feel like? Not on a chart, but to you. He waited. The silence in the room was different now, not judgmental, but expectant. It was an invitation. Something in his calm demeanor, in the directness of his gaze, cracked the dam of her embarrassment. The words, usually locked away behind a fortress of shame, began to trickle out. It's a fist, she began, her voice barely a whisper. She looked down at her hands, unable to meet his eyes. A hot, twisting fist in my gut. It clenches and the whole world narrows. All I can think about is finding a bathroom. It's like my body is screaming a 5-alarm fire for no reason. I've left full grocery carts in the aisle. I've had to get off the subway between stops and find some disgusting public restroom. I plan my entire life around the locations of bathrooms. I haven't eaten at a restaurant in over a year. She risked a glance at him. He wasn't writing anything down. He wasn't looking at her with pity or disgust. He was just listening, his expression one of deep, focused concentration. Go on, he said softly. And so she did. For the first time, she told someone everything. The debilitating bloating that made her look pregnant, the terrifying incontinence scares, the sheer exhausting anxiety of never knowing when her body would betray her. She talked about the boyfriend who'd left her after one too many migraines, that were actually her writhing in pain on her bathroom floor. She spoke of the loneliness, the feeling of being a leper in a world of healthy, functioning people. Tears streamed down her face, hot and unchecked. She was laying her soul bare, all her most shameful secrets, before this beautiful stranger in a white coat. When she finally finished, spent and raw, the room was quiet again. Dr. Evans leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Ilara, he said, using her first name with a natural intimacy that didn't feel intrusive. Thank you. Thank you for trusting me with that. What you're describing isn't just IBS, and it's certainly not in your head. The pain, the urgency, the social isolation, It's a classic, if severe, presentation for something specific. I suspect you have a condition called ulcerative colitis. The inflammation can be microscopic, missed on standard scopes. We need a different kind of test. He explained it all with a clarity and compassion that was utterly foreign to her. He didn't offer platitudes. He offered a plan. A specific blood test, a fecal calprotectin test, a new type of colonoscopy with more sensitive imaging. For the first time in years, a tiny, fragile flame of hope flickered to life in her chest. Someone had finally heard her. Someone believed her. Why? She asked, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Why are you different? Dr. Evans held her gaze, and for a moment she saw something profound in his eyes, a shadow of an old, familiar pain. Because, he said, his voice dropping almost to a whisper. I've seen it before. The embarrassment, the silence. It's a prison, and no one should have to live there. He stood, handing her a card. These are the orders for the new tests. My personal cell is on the back. If you have a flare any time, day or night, you call me. We're going to figure this out, Alara. Together. He left the room, and Alara sat there clutching the card like a lifeline. The scent of his cologne, something clean and woody, lingered in the air, mingling with the scent of her tears and the sterile hospital smell. For the first time she felt seen, not as a collection of symptoms but as a person, and the man who had seen her was unlike anyone she had ever met. The hope in her chest grew, intertwining with something else, something dangerous and exhilarating. She had no idea that the man who was saving her was also the one who would shatter her. The following months were a whirlwind of new routines and cautious optimism. Dr. Evans, Liam, as he'd insisted she call him after their third appointment, was as good as his word. The tests confirmed his suspicion, a severe, aggressive form of ulcerative colitis. He started her on a new, targeted medication, and slowly, miraculously, the fist in her gut began to unclench. Their appointments became the highlight of her weeks. They started with her symptoms but always drifted into other territories, their favorite books, their shared love of terrible 80s music, their dreams. She learned he was a painter, that he'd nearly pursued art before medicine. He learned she was afraid of pigeons and could recite every line from The Princess Bride. The professional boundary, once a stark line, began to blur into a warm, hazy gray. She was falling in love with him. It was as simple and as complicated as that. He was her savior, her confidant, the handsome prince who had walked into her tower of shame and offered her a key. One crisp autumn evening, after a checkup that had gone exceptionally well, he did something that sent her heart into a wild, hopeful frenzy. Alara, he said as she was gathering her things. He looked nervous, running a hand through his already messy hair. This is highly unprofessional. I could lose my license for this. But I can't stop thinking about you. Not as my patient, but as the funny, brilliant, incredibly strong woman you are. Would you have dinner with me? Tonight? The world tilted on its axis. Every warning bell in her head was silenced by the roaring joy in her heart. Yes, she breathed, a real unforced smile spreading across her face for the first time in years. I'd love to. Dinner was magic. It was at a small, intimate Italian place he knew, tucked away on a quiet side street. There were no white coats, no exam tables, just candlelight and the easy, flowing conversation they'd cultivated in his office. He held her hand across the table, his thumb stroking her knuckles, and she felt whole, seen and desired. Afterwards, they walked through the quiet city park, the leaves crunching under their feet. He stopped under an old oak tree, the moonlight dappling through its branches. I feel like I've known you forever, he murmured, his face close to hers. It's because you have, she said, her voice soft. You know the parts of me no one else does. He leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle and passionate and tasted of red wine, and a future she had never dared to imagine. In that moment, all the pain, the embarrassment, the loneliness, it all felt worth it because it had led her here, to him, as the kiss deepened. His hand, which had been resting on her lower back, slid down, pressing gently against the base of her spine. It was an intimate, possessive gesture, but for Alara it triggered something else, a deep, visceral memory, a ghost of a sensation, a specific pressure, a particular way of touching. The world, which had been a soft-focused dream, snapped into terrifying, brutal clarity. Her eyes flew open. She pulled back, staring at him, her breath catching in her throat. The moonlight caught his glasses, and in that instant she saw past the doctor, past the painter, past the kind, handsome man. She saw a 19-year-old boy at a fraternity party 7 years ago. The air left her lungs in a rush. The memory assaulted her. The loud music, the sticky floor, the fog of cheap beer. She'd been a college sophomore, painfully shy. He'd been different, more rugged, his hair longer, no glasses, but it was him. She was sure of it. He'd been charming, buying her drinks, making her feel special. They'd danced, and his hand had been on her back, right there, in that exact same spot with that same possessive pressure. She'd felt dizzy, unwell. He'd offered to take her somewhere quiet to get some air. The next part was a blur of fear and confusion. A dark, empty dorm room, his weight. Her feeble no lost in the roar of the party downstairs. The tearing pain, both physical and emotional. She'd been too drunk to fight, too terrified to scream. Afterward, she'd fled, burying the memory in the deepest, darkest part of her mind. A shame so profound she never spoke of it, not even to herself. It was just another thing to be embarrassed about, another reason to feel broken. The stomach issues, the anxiety, the crippling fear. It had all started a few months after that night. "Liam?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He smiled, mistaking her shock for passion. "It's okay, Alara, this is real. We're real." She took another step back, the world spinning. The kind doctor who had coaxed her deepest secrets from her, who had held her hand through her most humiliating moments, who had made her feel whole again, was the same man who had shattered her in the first place. He had treated the sickness without ever knowing he was the cause. He saw the change in her face then, the dawning horror. His smile faltered. "Alara, what's wrong? Are you in pain?" A hysterical sob-like laugh bubbled in her throat. Pain? He had no idea. She looked at him, truly seeing him for the first time. The savior and the destroyer merged into one person. He had given her back her health only to steal her soul all over again. "I have to go," she choked out, her voice strangled. "Wait, talk to me, please," he called after her, his voice laced with genuine confusion and concern. But Alara was already running, the crisp autumn air burning her lungs. She ran past the twinkling streetlights, through the park that had moments ago been a place of magic, now forever tainted. She ran from the devastating, unforgettable truth that the man who had taught her how to live again was the very same one who had taught her how to break. And the heart he had so tenderly pieced back together was now, irrevocably, shattered into a million new, more intricate pieces.